Hello to everybody, and thanks for joining us with this NIRVANA webinar. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where are you in the world. And I'm gonna do a very short introduction on the concept which has driven us to develop this product. And then Federica will show you a brief presentation on how it works. Okay, first of all, what is NIRVANA? Probably some of you already know NIRVANA is not a new product for BTS, and we've been working on this project since a few years now, and we also have around 150 systems already operating around the world. And what we are officially presenting today is the result of the technological evolution behind this product. But moreover, we also collected many data and many clinical experience in these years from the rehabilitation market in order to give more and more effectiveness to this system. NIRVANA is a system that is intended to speed up and improve neuromotor and cognitive rehabilitation therapy, thanks to the use of immersive reality. The literature is plenty of documentation regarding the use of virtual reality in rehabilitation, but we would like to show you today which are the unique feature of this system. So let's go to the strength point of NIRVANA. Before that, we always need to keep in mind that these kind of patients are very weak and very delicate, and they have troubles to support invasive rehabilitation systems. Moreover, the traditional treatments for these patients are quite often very boring and non-challenging. And so that is why we decided to develop this system, which allow the patient to enjoy a real immersive experience with certain features and characteristics. The first one is that with the use of NIRVANA, the patient is totally free to move. Second is that we do not use any viewer or gloves or sensor on the patient, which represent something very invasive for them. And third, but even more important, this is an immersive reality which give to the patient the real perception of the room in which he's performing the exercise. So what happens is that with the NIRVANA, the patient can interact, watching at the scenario, touching and listening to the feedback of what he's doing without any simulator. And, you know, we see a lot of systems which are using games on a screen, and then patients which are doing some action, and something happens consequently on the screen. I tell you, this is a kind of system which is not really understood or supported by this kind of patient. The unicity of the system is that you see something and you really go and touch and interact with this scenario that you see. So at the end, the most important word is the real experience that this kind of patient can have with the use of virtual reality. And those points are the one who make NIRVANA a unique medical device in the world. Why should we use the NIRVANA system? Because again, as we said, we can make a rehabilitation not so boring. We can challenge and motivate patients. even more important is that we can create motor tasks which are related to the capability of each single patient, and we can also adapt this difficulty, let me say, during the execution of an exercise. If a patient is not able to reach certain target, we try to make it easy for him in order to motivate his process of rehabilitation. Then it's also very important that we are able, during the execution of the exercise or later on showing the report, we can communicate to the patient what his performance has been, and again, day by day, week by week, by looking at the improvement, he can be motivated to do better and better. And then, last but not least, we can rehabilitate with the NIRVANA all the body districts, upper limbs, trunk, lower limbs, even head and neck can be rehabilitated with NIRVANA. And from the point of view of the patient, he feels that he is the active protagonist of what he is doing. Sometimes the therapist is in the scene with the patient in order to support him, but the movement and what he's doing by himself. And the new target that he's reaching, he's doing again by himself. So at the end, he's the protagonist of his rehabilitation. And the multisensory stimulation is also very important because during the execution of this motor task, the patient can have a visual feedback, auditive feedback, and this is recognized to be absolutely important for this level of motor rehabilitation. And of course, he can by himself again see his performance, what he has reached today, and challenge himself to do better and better tomorrow and day after. So at the end, the key point is that this kind of therapy is more effective because it's very motivating and very engaging for the patient. How it works? The scenarios that we create are modified thanks to the use of emotion analysis system, which make this interaction real. And the system can be used on wall or floor with different exercises, or combining the two configuration used not together, because till now there has been no need for putting together exercises with both legs and arms, but automatically the system can choose to work on wall or floor. One important news of this new release is that the application, the software, will be web-based, and so it will be compatible with all the devices, all tablets and smartphones. The use of tablets and smartphones is very important sometimes because the therapist himself is starting and stopping the exercise, and he cannot be on a desk with his computer, but he has to be in the scene with the patients. And another important news is that the new system get access to the database from different locations, so the therapist can have access to some part of the software, but at the same time, one doctor in an office can see the execution of an exercise in real time, or go and look to report from time to time and see the improvement of each single patient. Okay, that is all from my side. I now leave the stage to Federica, which is going in the other room for giving you a practice demonstration of the use of the system. Thank you very much. At the end of this practical session, we will be at your disposal for any question that you might have. Thank you very much.
Okay. Welcome again to everybody to this first webinar. Thanks, Luca, for the introduction. And in this second part of the webinar, I'm going to show you with a demonstration, practical, the main feature of the new software of NIRVANA. And as you can see, this is the main view of the software, and the NIRVANA software is a web-based interface. This means that any console in the NIRVANA net and with a browser installed can run the software. And once the doctor or therapist logged in the interface thanks to his username and password, this main view is open. And as you can see in this section, in the upper part of the software, we have the patient's database, the therapist database section, one of the main important feature added, that is the report section, and the general settings of the software. And starting with the patient's database, you can see that in the left section of the screen, you find all the patients inserted in your database. And we have added, for example, new features like the possibility to add pathologies or a group of treatment. So, for example, I can decide to add the information of left hemiparesis to these patients and save it, because it's important for the doctor or therapist identify also very quickly the patients in the database. I can, for example, filter the patients according to the pathology, for example. So I'd like to see all the patients with infantile cerebral palsy, and also with an age from 1 to 5 years, for example. And as you can see, to perform the rehabilitative exercises in the system, each patient must have associated a therapy. In this therapy, we can add the daily working session that will be made of one or more exercises. And this new feature can also help the therapist and the doctor for the planning of the daily session. And because, for example, they can define a therapy according to the time of treatment, or, for example, according to a pre and post particular treatment, like, for example, brain surgery. And now I can show you how to define a new therapy and a new session of exercises. So suppose I'm working with these patients. Now I have already created his therapy named therapy test. And I can add in this therapy all the session that I want, just by clicking on the icon, select new session, and I can give a name and eventually a description useful to identify the session, and define with this tag if it is a floor or wall session, for example. And in the In the session, I can add the exercise of interest using the exercise database, or I can use also the therapies database and very quickly start the therapy by clicking and by selecting default therapies, for example, or from the custom therapies, if I have defined this therapy the day before, for example. And as you can see, the session is a sequence of exercise, and for each exercise I can adjust the parameters. So this is a very new and important feature, because each exercise can be customized according to the patient's residual and daily function. So suppose to modify this tap mole exercise, I can, for example, adjust the number of holes and enhance the velocity of mole, for example, because I want to enhance the level of difficulty of this exercise, for example. I can set a rest time in order to define a rest time before to exercise, and give to the patients the possibility to have rest. And it's important for the playlist management also the possibility to decide an exit condition. So I decided to finish this exercise after 10 minutes of execution, and in this way I can in the following evaluation analyze, for example, how many number the patient has hit in this 10 minutes of execution. And this can be done for all the exercise in the session. I select done, and it's important also the possibility to duplicate this session in order to quickly start with a new session. So now we can start this session that we have added, and we go in the execution view, where I find in the left panel the playlist of exercises. As you can see, after the rest time, the exercise starts, and in real time you can see for the exercise in execution the metrics and the parameters that we can adjust. So, for example, if it's too difficult for the patients, I can adjust in real time the level of difficulty, and, for example, decide to reduce the number of holes or reduce the velocity. It depends on what I want to do. And I can use, of course, pause and also skip the exercise, for example. And if we go to the next exercise, for example, now we start exercise in the sprites category. So in this case, the patient is asked to reach and touch object in defined position. And as you can see in this exercise, for example, also logical and mathematical functions are required, because the patients should reach and touch the number in the correct order. Otherwise, the number of errors increase. And also in this case, I could adjust the number shown in the scenario. Going into the next exercise, I want to show you this new layout because it's important also the possibility to limit the working space, for example, focusing on one side of the patient's range of motion. Think, for example, to patients with hemiparesis, for example, or with neglect. And we can use, for example, this hemi-arc layout according with the patient's residual function. Always in the sprites category, for example, we have added a new exercise that is the memory exercise, because we can stimulate also executive function like the memory, because the patient is asked to find the couples of the same object. So you should also remember where the object is. And now I'm going to show you one of the new category that we have inserted, that is the grasping category. And here the patient is asked to simulate the grasping, and also cognitive function are involved, because in this case she has to follow a receipt and understand so the receipt. If the exercise is done correctly, the number of positive score enhanced. And in this category of exercise, we have several new scenarios available. And I'd like to conclude this session of exercise with another category. So, for example, the motion category, where the patient is asked to cover the widest portion of the screen with his movements in order to discover the picture in the background. We can also personalize this exercise, for example, with your own images, like patients' home or family pictures, for example. Okay. So this session of exercise is over, and now we can find out the other feature that we have added, that is the report section. So because it's important that we can measure how the patient has done the exercise, and then summarize all these metrics in a final and ready to read report. So I select the patients of interest, the therapy, and the session. I could compare several sessions, for example. I select the exercise of interest, and then automatically final report is generated. So in this case, you can see we have an overview of the session with the detail of the parameters and the metrics obtained by the patients. Also easy to read graphs that helps the interpretation of the report. The report can be printed as a PDF file for further evaluation and to evaluate the patient's progress in time. And so at this point, I I can say that the webinar is over, and so I thank you all of you for the attention and for your time.